Hey there, it's Steve from Serious Keto, and in this video, we are going to make a cracker with a new dough that I think is going to be the next Fathead. This dough is incredibly versatile. I use it in my new Keto Tortilla 2.0, which will be my next video. As you'll see in this video, you're able to do all kinds of different crackers with this recipe. It is very versatile, very customizable, and I suspect that a lot of you are probably going to do your own little riff on it soon. Hopefully one of us will figure out a way to do a really solid pizza crust out of it. Now every time I do a video, I get questions about substitutions, so I will address those at the end of the video. One ingredient you will not be able to substitute for this cracker recipe, you can substitute in the tortilla recipe, but not for this cracker recipe, is paneer, a pretty much flavorless Indian cheese. That is the genius of this recipe. That is what's going to make this, in my opinion, the next Fathead. I wish that it was my genius idea, but it wasn't. I got the inspiration for using paneer from Vernaz at Low Carb Cooking and Having Fun. I'll link to her recipe where I saw that down below. I looked all around to see if anyone had done this before Vernaz, and I couldn't find anyone. So she may actually be the inventor of this, in which case she deserves some sort of keto Nobel Prize. I'm not sure if she realized when she made that video what a big deal this is going to be. I think a lot of people, once they discover paneer and this recipe, are going to start building off of it. So I'm trying to figure out if we could get a good name for it. I'm going to call it Panhead, like paneer head, sort of instead of Fathead. I don't know. We'll see if it sticks. So before we make the crackers, I just want to let you know that this first video is just going to be sort of the generic, plain, minimally seasoned version of these crackers. They're kind of like a wheat thin in terms of flavor and consistency. But these things, I believe, are infinitely customizable. And starting next week, I will have a few more recipes for some flavored versions. Let's make some crackers. We'll start by mixing our dry ingredients. 2 teaspoons of lupin flour. You can use any brand, Miracle Flour, Lupina. 2 teaspoons of almond flour. 4 teaspoons of psyllium husk powder. 1/2 teaspoon of xanthan gum. And 1/4 teaspoon of sea salt. I'll mix these together. I always do this whenever I have xanthan gum. Make sure that that is fully incorporated into my dry ingredients. And we'll set this aside. Into a food processor, we will put 135 grams of that paneer cheese. Then we're going to process this into sort of a mealy sort of texture. It usually takes about 8 long pulses. So you can see that the texture here is fairly fine and crumbly. Then we'll add our dry ingredients to our crumbled paneer. Sprinkle, sprinkle. And then we will process for 20 to 30 seconds until the results look like a very coarse flour. Next, we'll take a little bit less than 1/2 cup of very warm water. That's about 115 milliliters. To that, we will add 2 teaspoons of avocado oil. We're then going to pour this into our running food processor until it forms a ball. Next, I'm going to turn my dough out onto a piece of plastic wrap, which I am then going to fold into sort of a rectangular envelope. What this allows me to do is flatten out the dough and kind of get it into a little bit of a rectangle, which will make it easier for me to roll out when that time comes. But for right now, I'm just going to let this sit for 20 minutes while my oven preheats to 325, which is 160, 162 degrees in Celsius. I'll link to this video right here of how to make sure your oven is properly calibrated and running in tip-top shape. Our dough is rested for 20 minutes, so now we will turn it out onto a silicone mat. It's not nearly as sticky anymore. I'm going to cover it back up with a plastic wrap so I can roll it out more easily. And starting with that rectangular shape instead of just a ball helps out a bit. I'm gradually going to work this out to between 14 and 15 inches, which is, I think, 36 centimeters. Don't worry about being perfect around the edges just yet. I'm feeling pretty good about these sides and here. Got a little gap here, so here's how we're going to deal with that. We're going to trim off the edges using an offset spatula. And throw that extra dough to the areas we need to fill out. I'll cover this back up with my plastic wrap and kind of pat it out a bit, and then use the rolling pin. And one last trip around the edge just to tidy things up. And there you go, pretty much a perfect rectangle. I'll transfer this onto a baking sheet. Then we'll pop this into our 325-degree oven for 5 minutes. After 5 minutes in the oven, the dough should be set enough that we can score it and poke it with a fork. If you use a pizza cutter, make sure to be very delicate as you're making your lines, as our goal is only to cut through the dough, not to cut through the mat. Bonus points if you have a lightsaber pizza cutter. I'm pretty positive any one of you can do a better job making uniform square sizes. Then we're going to poke this with a fork so that they don't bubble up. Then this will go back into the oven for 40 minutes. We will rotate it at the 20-minute mark. After 40 minutes, some of our crackers are going to be done. The way you can tell is if you start to pull them away and they crack right apart, they're done. So we'll transfer those, any of these that just break right off, to a cooling rack. Be warned, these are still pretty hot. I find that the perimeter is always done. Once you start getting into the second row, you might start finding that some of these still feel a little bit moist. In fact, I'm going to flip these upside down. And you can see some of these have got sort of a uncooked portion yet in the middle. So we're going to pop these back in the oven for another 5 minutes, and we're going to keep checking on them every 5 minutes, pulling out the ones that wind up being nice and completely brown like this. It took about 10 to 12 minutes for those crackers in the center to get fully baked. Why don't we have a little taste test? It's been probably a year and a half since I've had a wheat thin cracker, but this looks an awful lot like a wheat thin. That is a solid cracker. I will say that in this base version, it is a little bit bland. My recommendation, try this version first, and then decide how you would like to season these crackers. As for seasoning, one of the easiest things you could do is right after you roll out the dough, sprinkle a little bit of sea salt on top. Maybe another 1/4 teaspoon. Then lay your plastic wrap back over the top and just either using your hands or very, very gently with a rolling pin, kind of press that salt in. Now here's some more good news for you. That entire batch of crackers, 5 net grams of carbs. So divide all those crackers by 5. I think you wind up with, like 10, 12 crackers in a serving for 1 net gram of carbs. Pretty sweet deal. In terms of substitutions on this recipe, I'm going to be doing a bunch of variations of this cracker in an upcoming video. But here's what I can tell you. If you have a peanut allergy and can't have lupin flour, you can substitute coconut flour. You're going to get a different taste. It's not going to be quite as hearty, in my opinion, but its moisture absorbency is approximately the same, so I'm thinking you'll get a fairly similar texture. In terms of the avocado oil, you could substitute in olive oil. That would be perfectly fine. It's going to give you a slightly different flavor. Might be a flavor you prefer. Also, if you want a flakier cracker, you could use butter instead of olive oil or avocado oil. So my next handful of videos is going to be me building off of this panhead dough recipe. We're going to be doing a tortilla chips, a hard taco shell, as well as a handful of variations on this cracker. So stay tuned. And if you enjoyed this video, click that like button, hit that subscribe button if you're not already a subscriber. If you want to be notified whenever I release a new video, tap that bell for notifications and set it to on. Thanks for watching.